I'm Keith David, and this is the special Criterion edition of Dead Presidents.
Hi, I'm Larenz Tate. On this track, you will hear commentary by Alan and Albert Hughes, Keith David, myself, Dr. Todd Boyd, Professor of Cinema at USC, Ari Merretazon, on whom this story is loosely based, Lisa Rinzler, Director of Photography. The Hughes brothers.
Yeah, basically, I mean, the story behind the credit sequence too is that the main thing was our editor came up with an idea of putting one shot at the head of the credits right here, and I said let's put two of them, them preparing for the heist. My idea is if we put these two things up here at the head of the credits, that the audience would pay more attention to what goes on as he's growing up, what led to these events, kind of things, and what makes them get to the point where they're gonna be in white-faced and dumpsters with guns, So it's more of a thing to me where I wanted the audience to pay attention more than anything, and then they'll come back around. I think when we read the short story in the book, we saw that it would be, you can make this into either a great underground film or a great Hollywood film. You can go one of two ways. They both have the plot that we thought was great, which was, we were going to work up everything until we get to the heist, and the heist is going to be the big boiling point, basically, And that was the most interesting, most fun thing for us to do.
But nobody cared.
Todd Boyd is Professor of Cinema at USC.
Dead Presidents, to me, is like a Miles Davis record from the early 60s, the period when Miles reformed his band with Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and Wayne Shorter. And he's playing, I think, some of the best music, maybe the best music of his career, but it's happening at a time when people are doing so many other things that the audience in some way doesn't fully appreciate the significance of what's going on. In that same way, I think Dead Presidents comes at a time when people are doing other things, and other things are so popular that maybe they missed the boat in terms of really getting the significance of this film.
I think the biggest problem with this movie, though, was it came out like 2 days after the O.J. verdict, and racial tensions were very high, and I think if you look at all the articles that came out in the movie, it labeled our movie a ghetto drama, and it had nothing to do with the ghetto. And I think a lot of whites were pissed off about the O.J. thing, a lot of blacks were pissed off about the O.J. thing, but whites purposely didn't go out to the movies, to see any black things, or weren't trying to hear any of that. And not like they ever were, Yeah, it's like, Dead Presidents, hey, we're not trying to hear that right now. O.J. got off,
Ari Merretazon.
The movie Dead Presidents to me is the valleys that black men go through, the changes that we go through, that men go through. In this particular case, black men, in the context of the environment in which our lives are lived.
Alan Hughes.
Well, originally there was a lot of corny ideas to go over, but we were going to put Jimi Hendrix's national anthem played over this before we thought about asking Danny Elfman to do this, and didn't think he would do it, but he ended up coming on and was into the whole idea, and it was fun working with him. It was hard as hell to shoot this. In the end, we finally had to get a title optical house, or how do you say, digital house to do it, our Greenberg and Associates to do it, and they enlarged the the bills and got separate kinds of paper, like clay paper and everything like that. And it was like enlarged, it was probably about really big. I mean, I don't even know what the size is, but about 4 feet. That's how big one of those bills were. And we burnt all these white guys up. Oh, that's shitty. And see, basically, this scene right here, at first was 10 minutes into the movie. This scene right here, and we reversed it because we needed to get closer to the character, Anthony and his friends. Know what they're all about. Yeah, the first scene actually was him walking to Kirby's place for the first time, to Curtis Mayfield's Keep On Pushing, that hot day. And then we decided to reverse it, because we needed to know more about who he was and who his friends were, because if we started the scene with just him walking to Kirby's and all that pool hall stuff goes down, you really don't hear much from him, and you really don't care much about him. You don't really know what his motivation is, what he aspires to be, who he is.
Why you gotta be asking me all that? I mean, look, I'm just looking out for you. All I'm saying, man, fine as she is, she should be giving you something. I bet you ain't even smelt the pussy, eh?
You two realize that soon we're gonna be out of school, right?
Ooh, sure.
After 4 long years of that shit, man, I can't fucking wait to get out. That's all I've been thinking about, man. You know, I just been thinking about, like, what am I gonna do afterwards, right?
You know, I can dig some traveling.
Well, he just, you know, I think the thing we identified with his characters when we were coming out of high school, we wanted to, you know, do something different. We didn't want to go to college, you know, and we hated the military, but that was like a option because it would get us out of the house and get us, you know, our own life and whatever, and just didn't want to go to school. So I think that he's just young and naive. We weren't this naive, and he just wants to get out there and see different things, and you know, he gets out there and eventually sees, you know, reality, and that's what ultimately changes him, you know, or makes him a man, or makes him a whatever he is, you know. Crazy.
What the fuck you been smoking? Y'all might think I'm crazy, but I just want to do something that's different. Yeah, well, getting your fucking head blown off here is different. Hey, man, turn that shit down. And throw this
But also the thing that was really cool in the book is that he had a premonition that he would be in war he'd be in prison for 5 years, and he'd be going to a major war. And both those came true. And it was weird, you know, how we try to work that on the script, and it never really worked out because it always played as a flashback or a flash forward, and it just, there was no real way to address it, so we dropped it. There's a lot of elements of that story, I think, that if you could visually play it out, it would have been, you know, that in itself was a great story. But
Ari Merretazon.
Early on in my life, when I was about 10 or 12, I used to live about 2 doors down from a pool room in Washington, D.C. I had 15 East Capitol, so I used to come out of the house all the time and just come and sit on the stoop, which is about a door from the pool room, which subsequently became the businessman, the Northeast Capitol Hill Businessman Association, where I subsequently was arrested. So when I was about 10 or 12, I used to come and sit on the stoop, and one morning a vision came to me that God showed me where I was going to be in war and prison. And he told me that I'll survive war, I wouldn't get hurt or anything like that, but I'll be in prison for 5 years. He didn't tell me why or anything like that, just showed me in the war, and that always stayed with me. I really never really share that with anybody because it was a personal thing that I really experienced. I don't look back and say, I wish that didn't happen. Man, do you know, I just don't do it because all was nothing more than valuable learning experience. It made me who I am. I'm a product of all that has occurred right now, and God is not through with me yet, and I know it.
This scene right here in spring of 1969, this is supposed to be the first scene you saw in the whole movie. And this day in particular was freezing cold. I mean, freezing like zero. And everybody had that, you know, if you look closely, you can see people they're acting pretty good. But after we yell cut, everybody run inside the little shops and whatever. If you look at the trees are like, you know, stripped down. Bare, yeah. But the thing about this neighborhood, this neighborhood at this time was it's very integrated. You know, Latinos, blacks, whites.
You see Hughes and Sons over there?
It's a Hughes and Sons.
It came in back there. There's a little inside thing we just missed right there with the
Hughes and Sons. And then when he gets back in the 70s, it's pretty much all black and bombed out. You know, and that's the changes that go down here.
What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, there, Jelly Bean, what's going on?
Lisa Rinzler.
The pool hall is a world unto itself. It's Kirby's world. The Steadicam shots in the pool hall are covering an immense amount of territory. You start by looking up the stairs and end up in Kirby's back room. So you travel an immense amount of distance and you see every which way. That is a great challenge for lighting and operating, and what it forces you to do is think of ways to hide the lights, and we were doing a lot of incredibly simple things.
His numbers. Keith David.
Well, after I saw A Menace to Society, I was only too glad to have an opportunity to work with these brothers. I found them very clear about what they wanted. They were as strongly opinionated as I am, and so it was a very good collaboration because I think that we both were surprised because I think that the character, as they originally saw it, was different after once I was brought in, and I brought things that they hadn't seen, and they had led me in directions that I hadn't planned on going either. Kirby has an energy that they wanted, and I didn't really necessarily agree with it for a moment, but then I found a way to play it that didn't violate my sense of truth and didn't violate their sense of truth, and I sort of came up. Kirby was sort of like an old lion, you know, who's, you know, it's the difference between being young and dangerous and old and treacherous. I mean, he wasn't going to come out with several fast moves, but the one or two slow moves that he did were going to be deadly and count.
And I'll shoot you.
Oh, shit. Oh, I know you out your motherfucking mind, man.
Put your money where your mouth is.
It's interesting because, you know, with his character, as with a lot of the characters, we did like little tiny things that altered the character. We got like these special contact lenses for him. They're like bloodshot contact lenses, and yellowed his teeth up because we wanted him to look real weathered and gave him a scar. And with Anthony early on in the movie, we had him wear light. Lorenz's eyes are dark brown, almost black. We had him wear light brown contact lenses in the early part of the movie. Then when he got to Vietnam, we took him out, so the rest of the movie was very stark, dark eyes, which is subtle things that I'm sure nobody notices. But
if you look at now, and we notice on the set, when he wears light brown contacts, his face becomes like a glowing brown, sunshine brown kind of thing, you know. And then when you take him out, it makes all the difference in the world. But nobody can tell. They always say, "God, he plays young so good." He does, but his face also looks, you know, all the more brighter.
Eyes are everything.
No goddamn business being here in the first place.
Well, one thing is that our biggest downfall, but our biggest downfall, but our what gets us most excited about making a movie is that sometimes we'll sell our main character out for a character we're more fascinated by. You know, like in Menace, it was O-Dog. We were definitely fascinated by him, and a lot of the scenes you would see to start off with the main character or whoever's scene it was, and then all of a sudden it would become O-Dog scene because that's who we were fascinated by as filmmakers. And in this movie too, there's a lot of actors that we also want to showcase. And the guy who played the pimp, Clifton Powell, you know, there's a point where he took the scene away from Anthony, and purposely, you know, we wanted to showcase, you know, and show that kind of character and what he was all about. And Larenz was very giving when it came to that kind of thing, you know. But that's our downfall. But you know, I think it'll always be. I think, you know, when a fascinating character steps into a room, I think that's who the audience wants to see too. You know, I hate to watch a movie and you go, God damn it, it's a great character right there, but they won't give me a close up here, or they won't give me this, and they won't let me see him doing what he does best. You know, screw the lead. You know, right now. You know.
Your little monkey ass, man. Oh man. Shut your motherfucking mouth, man. I'd have cut you. Little motherfucker. Yeah. It hurt, don't it? What the fuck?
I really liked Kirby. I mean, I like him a lot because one of the themes I think of this piece is that good people do bad things. Clearly, these are good, decent people who go off on a bad idea. I mean, there are some people who might make some kind, you know, who might make moral judgments on it. That, I mean, the man is surviving. Not only is he surviving, but he is helping. He, in fact, is helping, you know, some of the kids in the neighborhood. Some of them don't have fathers. He looks after them. He he teaches them how to become surviving men. You know, how to keep some money in your pocket. You know, you don't have to hurt nobody unless somebody deserves to be hurt. I mean, I think anybody lives by those kinds of rules. You don't walk around trying to be no bad guy and strong arm anybody, but you don't let anybody take advantage of you. I mean, I think that's the great lesson here that Kirby is imparting on to Anthony.
You want to take a little run with me?
Yeah, I'll take a little run with you.
I love car scenes. Car scenes, first of all, you have all those windows, so you're getting to see frames through frames, which is always exciting. And, of course, it always creates the problem of when you're shooting at night that you have to light outside the window to see anything. But in our case, these car scenes were lit unbelievably simply with fluorescent lights and black tape applied to them to take down where the light was too much. And they're just rigged inside the car to the dashboard.
What you call it, Nelly? Come on, Nelly.
Also, you'll notice another inside thing when our production designer actually came up with it, when him and Kirby go to the Rib Shack. It says P Daddy's Rib Shack, and P Daddy's is short for Pimp Daddy, which is an old blaxploitation reference basically, and that was David Brisbane's idea.
The Rib Shack, I've been fond of this scene. First of all, it takes place near an elevated subway train, which I like. It adds an element of inner city and also menace to the feeling of it. And we were able to create sort of a flash, an arc flash, as if a train was going by overhead, as well as using the sound effect. The scene itself has a strange mix of violence and even a bit of comedy to it. So I've been fond of this scene.
This right here, the stuntman got injured. He was thrown out this window. He got glass all in his eye, and he busted his arm up or whatever. And that's the only scene in the whole movie where an ambulance had to be called and somebody was injured. And then we got another stuntman threw him out the window.
Oh man, Kirby. What the fucking leg? You stupid son of a bitch! You grabbed the wrong
This wide shot right here is a digital shot. His leg was black wrapped.
And this night right here was freezing too. A lot of these nights, they were supposed to be spring or summer nights. They're just freezing cold. That's why Keith David's shirt is buttoned up to the top right there.
It was cold. It was damn cold. Kirby, from the story that I made up, Kirby's leg was blown up in a landmine. But there was no indication of that. That's my own backstory. But what happened in a scene that was cut, what happened was I had a woman that I was in love with and intending to marry before I got drafted. I got drafted and got sent away before we could get married. But I left her pregnant. She had the baby. And when my leg got blown off, the Army informed her that I was dead.
What's wrong?
So being that she was not my widow because we hadn't married yet, she was not entitled to any benefits, so she went back to Mexico. And so I spent the first few years out of the military trying to find her, and I never did.
No, it's not funny.
So there was a through line in the movie that was cut about me, let's get back to Mexico. And so a couple of scenes Larenz said, come on, kid, and after we do this, we get the money, we'll go get us a villa in Mexico. And he says, well, maybe you'll find your daughter. And I said, well, maybe I will.
And this is actually a real house, a real location we shot in. One of the very few as far as main sets, but...
You see, Anthony?
It's funny, a lot of the questions we get about this scene in particular are, the scenes with the parents in particular, is why didn't the father say more? Why didn't the father talk more? And there are some scenes where it shows the father taking Anthony out right after this scene, in fact, duck hunting, and pretty visual scenes, but in the end we didn't use them because, it added too much more to it added too much more time to the movie, and it wasn't significant enough as far as what they were saying. The writing wasn't all that good in those scenes. And when Anthony returns home, they go duck hunting again with his brother, Edward, and Anthony almost shoots his father out of he hears something. His father steps on a twig, that cliche, whatever, and he almost shoots his father, and Edward jumps in the way. And we're just trying to show basically with those things, is the bond between him and his father, and Edward and his mother are more bonded. And his father went to the Korean War as Kirby did, and he now is just a quiet mechanic, working class man, and
passive.
Yeah, very passive. And out in the woods with his son, he was very articulate about what what he believed about him going into war, and pretty much supported him in his decision. But in the end, we had to cut those scenes out, and a lot of people said that the father was soft or wasn't there.
But I agree with the father not being there, because that's a part of Anthony's personality that he took. He's almost like a cross between him and Kirby, half and half. He's passive, naive, and his father seems to be the same way. He's not a politician or anything like that. But then you look at Kirby, who was more on the seedy side, who was more on aggressive, and basically Anthony's, both of those men put together.
When you're baby, you are tight, and everything's around you is mellow.
In this scene right here, this is one of those few scenes right here that this graduation scene, which the writer had written these guys talking in like 3 different locations in the script. Here in the back room, out in the back alley, and they're standing. There was just the same dialogue. It was pretty repetitious, and in rehearsals, we got together and had Chris do a lot of ad-libbing, and all the guys do a lot of ad-libbing. And I remember when we got to the set, I told them, guys, get into character over here by this doorway right here, and just walk, into the room and sit down where they would sit down. And they sat right where they're sitting right now in character. And what you're hearing from them is pretty much ad-lib. It wasn't scripted, especially Chris's stuff.
I got so many hoes in there, man. I got to get an assistant pimp just to keep in track of them, make sure they on the right streets and shit.
Say, Skippy, why you always talking about this pimp stuff, man? What's happening?
Because it's real, nigga. I'm a pimp. Pimping running my family. My great-great-granddaddy was a slave, and he was a pimp. He used to have hoes pick his cotton in the field. He didn't have to do shit.
You better be careful, man. You're gonna catch something, Skip. Watch.
That's all right,
Skip, he studied Richard Pryor from the Mac, Chris Tucker, a lot of the jargon, a lot of the flow of the language and the body language also.
If you look at his walk, Chris's walk when he's when that walk home down the street when he comes back home from Vietnam, it's like a cross between Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and Richard Pryor. And if you look at it now, it's the exact walk.
Did I tell you?
So when did that happen?
Last week, after he man.
Yeah, right, motherfucker. Pass the joint.
I own that bong in that scene. That's my bong. I took it after the scene was shot.
Tight, man.
Todd Boyd.
Skippy is talking game. He's talking shit. But we never see him pimp. We never see him, with his stable. He's just talking. And that's what's so funny about it. You could talk this pimp talk and never, ever have to be a pimp. That's what's so beautiful about it. It's a way of kind of defining your masculinity amongst, African-American men without ever having to do anything. And talking shit is so much a part of the culture and so much rooted in, say, the oral tradition of African-American culture that Skippy embodies that very well. He does a very good job of talking, and from his talking making us laugh, but also looking at him saying, yeah, right. In a sense, that's what's so funny about it, is the fact that what he's saying is not true, but he says it so well.
Now, be where I be. Motherfucking pimp. If I gotta go where every hoe want me to be, I be confused. Motherfucker, don't make me hurt my hand again.
Larenz Tate.
Alan and Albert would always say, yo, do the Mac, do the Mac. Chris and I would do scenes from the Mac. You know what bothers me? What bothers you? I just can't understand, man. How women just can go out and sell their bodies, baby. Dig it, baby. How you feel? I feel good. I feel up, baby. I feel good. I feel up. Yes.
Well, I'm gone.
One thing we really want to work on is the lead character, which we're still working out the nuts and bolts of making our lead character the lead character.
Or interesting to us.
Interesting, yeah. And I think that, sometimes we get insecure and go, oh, we need to do these close-ups like this, or put him on an apple box if he's, shorter or whatever. And somehow we want to find a middle ground between what Hollywood, how they treat their leading man, and how we would want to treat our leading man, because we would never want our leading man to be that glossy. And
when we have a leading man or a leading woman, you have to treat them as that, and when you see them walking in the streets, they're not going to look the same as they do in a movie because they were, everything was fabricated around them. Apple boxes, the height in them, certain angles that look better on them. And that's one thing we're working out in this movie is that, okay, let's look at the action now. What's the best angle? What's the best side? What's the best, this and that for the camera to get next to them and make them look good. Because in the first movie, because it was so crude, we didn't have to, think about that. And in the end, you look at it and you go, okay, that could have been a lot better. We could have cleaned that angle up a lot better and made him seem like this, So there's a lot more manipulation going on that we're getting into now.
The sex scene was originally written as the writer had it, he straddles her in a chair and he's doing her doggy style and he, just basically like adult fucking, and then, me and my brother are having a hard time going, I don't relate to, when I was 17 years old to just straight fucking like that.
Or we weren't interested in doing just a fuck scene.
Yeah, we were. Well, even with the characters, I don't relate to me doing that when I was young like that. I mean, yeah, when you get seasoned with a girl or whatever, but we didn't want to do just the traditional fuck scene, and we're like, beating ourselves to death trying to figure out what to do, and so we got the actors and we all. The day before, and figured it. Let's do something real clumsy, like like the first time and whatever. And we all added our own little experience in, whether it was the brawl or the socks, not finding the pussy, whatever, and or bumping the bed, bumping our heads, whatever. And everybody, all four of us, Larenz, Rose, Albert, me, added our own experience. And they ad-libbed. This was the last day we shot in New York before we went to Florida. And they ad-libbed all this and did a great job.
But like you said, there's like four things that are funny to us in the scenes, and each one of them are personally from what happened with one of us. I'm not gonna mention what, but
yeah. But they, what's funny is these two it was the most exciting. Whenever they would work, it was just them two together working on the set because she's a great person. He's a great guy, and they don't give you no trouble. They only want to do. They only want to do more. They don't want to, do less or settle for less. And they're not like all, she, on the other hand, was a trip.
The love scene was the last scene of the shoot. And it was the best for me because I got a chance to hang out. I got a chance to do some serious scenes with Rose, and we began to, just become buddies, and we were real cool. And by the time we got to the love scene, we were very nervous, but, the Hughes brothers sat us down and said, look, it's nothing to worry about. We want this to be a love scene that we haven't seen before, something that is just like fun. I mean, you see two people at the end of the love scene. Of course, they had a tender moment. As you can see, they're having a tender moment here. About him leaving her and going off to the war.
Maybe I might get hurt out there and never come back. I don't want you waiting for nothing.
You're not scared of losing me?
I didn't say that either.
I'm scared of losing you.
I think throughout the whole film, Anthony is running from something, running to something else. He never quite knows where he's going or what he's doing. He just does it. A lot of it's instinctual. And at the end of the film, we find that he can't run anymore because, he's on his way to prison. For the first time in his life, he's realized that he has to stop and assess his surroundings, and he might not be able to move as fast as he had been in the past. But as a young man, particularly during this time, it was not uncommon to be running, to be in motion, because as long as you're in motion, you don't have to stop and think. And I think for Anthony, when he does stop and is forced to think, it's not what he wants it to be. But as long as you're moving, there's this sense of urgency that defines one's personal life and one's quest in life that is even that much more poignant when you consider the late 60s and early 70s and the social and political concerns of the time. And if we talk about this as a coming-of-age story, his youthfulness, as youthfulness is often characterized, has to do with not really knowing where to go or what to do, but when you're young, you do things instinctually. You don't need to think them out. You just do them. You live by doing. But as you get older, you have to rely more on your wits and your intellect and your ability to think. And I think the thing for Anthony is the fact that he never really stops running. He only pauses momentarily, and those pauses, I think, are quite significant. But at the end of the film, he has this long pause that he now has no control over.
See, I used to have nightmares about, having to escape somewhere and running through people's yards, and that was always scary as, a kid, running through people's yards. You have to hurry up and get out of that person's yard because you don't want them to say anything and be out there, and that's why that guy goes, nigga, get out of my yard, whatever.
And also, you have these dogs here. He has to run out of the yard.
And we're trying to figure out a transition to, and then Albert came up with this idea. Go ahead.
Which is Film School 101, use a tree as a wipe. And we actually flew the tree to Florida, this plastic stump we had, made our little match cut, and that was it. It was the easiest shot to make, actually, in the movie. From studio heads to the guy on the street, they talk about that shot right there.
Yeah.
This whole thing was just like the heist to us. It was like, we went there to shoot it. We didn't get all our shots, and it dragged them for like a week and a half, this whole thing.
Disorganized.
Yeah.
Disorganized, not because of us, because a lot of stuff, because of us, a lot of stuff we don't know that we expect other people to know around us.
There was no backup plan for the shooting of Vietnam, I guess. It's like we only had a certain amount of days to be down there. And the funny thing was, one of the Disney's inside guys went up to my AD and said, look, whatever you do, just make sure it doesn't go over 5 days. We can't go over 5 days, extra. So he told that to my AD, and that was the wrong thing to tell him because he came and told me, and I go, oh, we got an extra 5 days of shooting. So that just cushioned us, basically, and that's the time we needed to be out there and act like that, because you need time to be unorganized. If you don't have any shooting plan, real solid structure or storyboards, which we did, and we had a shot list and probably 2 or 3 scenes storyboarded that didn't even come out like the storyboards. You need a lot of time for that, and you look at directors like John Woo.
That's what I'll leave me.
This scene right here also was the first scene you see Anthony without those contacts we're talking about, and when that soldier dies on him, you see like this look on his face for the first time. Reality. First time we saw this scene with a test audience, they were laughing. They thought the movie was a comedy. The first half of it, before we get to the war scenes, it became reality for them, which is we laughed because it was what we wanted. We first started talking about the script. That's exactly what we wanted people to feel. We wanted them to feel all fun and happy-go-lucky in the beginning of the movie, and then when it got here, it kind of like shocked them and disgusted them as it did Anthony. As it turned him, we wanted the audience to turn with him. And right there, you saw his face when he was looking at that soldier dying, and that soldier said, tell my mama, tell my mom. He couldn't even get the words out, and his look in his eyes was like, pretty much what the audience was feeling when we first saw it with him. Those are digital clouds right there.
Yeah, those shots where you see the missile clouds coming in right there, those are digital shots.
Yeah.
And this scene in particular, where you see all these explosions, this was all like, we had to scrape the bottom of the barrel of our footage to get all the stuff you see right here, because we did the first explosion, which was a realistic firecracker bombs going off over the jungle, and the realistic version, like they always say, Hollywood overdoes it because the realism of something is not that exciting. It wasn't exciting. And then we had to come back on Thursday of that week when we shot this on Tuesday and redo the explosion again. And it still wasn't exciting. And we had to just grab what we could to put the explosion thing together.
Saddle up. Let's get to the rally point. Take that whirlybird home. We got some beer to drink.
We going to the rally
The
point?
Hughes brothers.
They in the boot camp part of Vietnam, they all rehearsed and ran drills, everything, and fatigues. But we initially went out to stay a week out in the bush with the actors, and I went with them because I wanted to go through it with them and see what that was all about. And the first night I froze my ass off because it was so cold out there in Florida. We thought it was gonna be so hot, and I didn't have like a sleeping bag or nothing. All the other guys did, and me and Chris Tucker ended up escaping.
They went AWOL.
Yeah, from the camp, and we saw the vans driving by with my brother and Technical Scout. We started shooting the AK-47 or whatever, the M16, trying to get attention, and we got rescued. And Dale Dye was all pissed off, and I had to pull all the guys out there because most of us were catching like pneumonia, the flu out there, or whatever, because it was so cold. And that's the only thing we punked out on. But they continued with the military training, everything, in full character. full fatigues, for a whole week. And as far as on location, rehearsals with a wardrobe, we hadn't done that in New York. We had done on location rehearsal, but never in wardrobe.
You lucky bastard. You get back to CP, you name your own price, sir.
No way, D'Ambrosio. I'm keeping this one. Been looking for one of these since Cleon and I got here in '66. Ain't that right, Cleon?
Ari Merretazon.
I felt this very interesting, being that the guy who cut the head off was the black guy. In real life, it was a white guy, And but nevertheless, that just stood out in my mind, because people asked me the question, was there a brother who did that? I said, nah, we didn't do nothing like that. I never known a brother do anything like that. He was a squad leader of X-Ray. X-Ray always volunteered. He would volunteer X-Ray squad for any mission. Burroughs would go. If he had to chase somebody, had to go in the hole, he had to do anything extra work at night and whatnot, his squad would go. And so when they got undermanned one time, they shifted me over into X-Ray squad. I said, oh, Lord. I'm here with this crazy man there. And one time we had an ambush set up, and we killed about 6 or 7 Viet Cong. And he started, cut off his head, cut off one of the Viet Cong's head, and carried it around in his hooch. This is my souvenir. This is my last year. They want to send me home, huh? I'm gonna take something with me, because he was mad. They want to let him stay over there no longer. You see? And they're gonna send me. I'm gonna take something with me. And finally, the platoon leader made him throw it away, but he cut off the ears and kept the ears.
I think the filmmakers are, looking at this coming-of-age story, if you will, but they're looking at the significance of the war at home, these kind of cliches that we've come in contact with Vietnam. But the difference here is we've never seen a compelling story about black Vietnam vets on film. And an overwhelming number of the men killed in Vietnam were African-American men. So it's long overdue that we see this on film, and it needs to be a part of, America's reconciliation with the Vietnam era. And I think this film does a very good job of demonstrating that fact.
There was really no racial tension in our platoon that I can really identify. It's only when we got back to base camp and hearing the tales, what the brothers in base camp would tell us about the relationship with other white soldiers in base camp, and then us witnessing on our own selves, seeing the rebel flags being flown on jeeps and stuff like that. You see, that was going on in the base camp. So we as infantry soldiers coming back hearing that, we saying, "Oh, what's going on here?" And the folks who actually end up burning the shit, and pardon the expression, was the folks who were black folks. But and the whites in the field would come back and work in supply for a while or pull guard around the perimeter. And so it was that type of racism that you saw, unequal treatment of blacks and whites. Then you also saw some of the regular base camp support people riding around with rebel flags on the Jeep. It was allowed in base camp solely for the purpose to deal with strife between blacks and whites.
Man, fuck this shit.
Oh yeah, man, this was interesting. Many brothers, when we come back into base camp, you start reminiscing about home and what have you. I wouldn't engage in those type of discussions. We'll sit there and listen to music and whatnot, the 60s music and whatnot. You might talk about good, positive things, your loved ones, but when you're getting down to pity parting about I miss my wife and I'm done over here, I feel like something going to happen to me, I'm not going to make it back. You had to get away from me. When it moved in that direction, I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to hear it because there was nothing that positive that could do for me or the person who's talking that type of talk out there in that field. You had to clearly be focused, You had to talk about the positive things as opposed to your sadness and you thinking that something's going to happen to you. A person really didn't have nothing to do with that anyhow, so why talk about it? Everybody here is subject to get hurt. Big deal. That's what we're in war. So we don't need to embellish upon that negative and keep us from reacting when things occur.
That shit don't exist to me. I don't give a fuck about anything or anyone in it. Because the minute I do, I'm a dead man out here. And you remember that shit. We'll talk about the world when we get back.
Yeah, whatever, man. I'm finna go get high. I mean real high. And I'm gonna get my dick sucked, too. Go! Like that. Souvenir me boo-boo. Big dick. Big. Very, very big. Can you handle it?
Hey there, Kirby. Lisa Rinzler.
The Vietnam sequence, which is the second sequence of the film, which is meant to establish, it allows the viewer to see how Anthony really experienced and witnessed some horrors and went into the next phase of his life, is shot mostly in a rough style. In terms of using dollies, we would be handheld on a dolly. We never used Steadicam, not ever in Vietnam. And we were trying to establish the feeling of urgency and discomfort and heat. It has a sort of hopefully a warm, dusty look to it.
Now you're good.
We certainly wanted the Vietnam sequence to have a different feel from the rest of the film, mostly in the way the camera moves, that it's not particularly precise or clean, and that it was meant to feel dusty and gold. And there are some scenes which are cool, in Vietnam, but for the most part, we were trying to get a hot, uncomfortable, urgent camera style going here.
And I think we had just finished a scene where Anthony is writing the letter back home to Kirby. And after we shot that, he was saying, just real awkward. He said, do you feel that way? He said, don't you just feel a little offbeat down here shooting this Vietnam sequence? I said, yeah, man, I feel offbeat, kind of awkward. I said, but maybe that's what Vietnam was about. You really couldn't pinpoint what was going on. I said, let's use that feeling to our advantage and put it in the film.
Well, I think it's important at this point to talk about the recent tradition of Vietnam films that we've become accustomed to. Certainly, Oliver Stone has mastered the Vietnam genre with Platoon and Born on the 4th of July, which I think is the most significant film of all the Vietnam films. And what's interesting about Born on the 4th of July is that it takes white masculinity and, demonstrates the nuances of white masculinity through a very precarious time for American culture. And Ron Kovic, after returning from Vietnam, and he's literally disabled and crippled, has to regain his masculinity in a different way. He has to find another voice. He has to find another way of articulating himself. But in Dead Presidents, Anthony Curtis ends up in jail. Ron Kovic in Born on the 4th of July ends up speaking at the Democratic National Convention. So it suggests to us that even post-Vietnam, white males were able to kind of find a space for themselves, albeit with a certain amount of change, whereas black males found themselves in very similar predicaments that they had found themselves in many, many times before. So to look at the genre of Vietnam and what it has to say about masculinity, we also have to look at the expectations Vietnam films have built up for us.
The look, we studied a lot of photos about the way the soldier looked, there's just daze in their eyes, some of which we couldn't get, I think, but it's a lot of this chopping off head, putting in the backpack thing. Those are all real stories. A lot of people go, you guys made that up, it didn't happen in Vietnam. I say to people that say that is like, in a war-type situation, whatever you can possibly imagine, the most disgusting thing has gone down, from women being raped with, AK-47s to, a guy getting shot in his asshole. A guy getting his fingers. Anything you can think of has been done.
But they're basically, their senses become more animalistic. They're more in tune with nature when they're in this kind of recon group. Because they live in the bush and everything like that. So everything that they used to care about in their old lives is all out the window, and now they're become this new being. When they get back to civilization, somebody jumps up behind them, they're gonna get chopped in the throat,
Stop.
360. Oh, dude.
Hey, that was a dick. You just missed a dick scene. I have that dick in my closet wrapped up in some paper.
Why is there a dick in his mouth?
Because they cut his dick off. That's like one of the things they did out there that we were really reading about. And it's funny because we had this appeal with the MPA, and this nerdy guy stood up for the MPA and goes, and there's a scene with the penis in the mouth, and we didn't want to let that go, but we had to. If it was my personal choice, we wouldn't let the penis fly.
The fuck you got there, Curtis? Something about black men go home. This isn't your war.
Talk to vets about in Red is that they leave a lot of leaflets around saying, black men go home, this is not your war, to kind of create like infighting, amongst the soldiers, and a lot of white guys that try to hang out around the blacks just so they wouldn't get shot, because that's a digital shot right there too.
Yeah, the mountains in that shot right there are actually from our location scout. David Brisbane took pictures of the scenery just for location scouting.
In Thailand.
And when we shot in Florida, there was no mountains, so we took the exact 35 negative from a still camera, gave it to our optical or digital house, and they put those in there from the location scout. So there was some use to that location scout after all.
It cost $100,000. And those mountains cost us $100,000 outside of the digital cost. That's how much a location scout costs.
Here, you'll see something ridiculous my brother asked for right here. You see Chris Tucker right there in the background? He's about to kneel down, and in the background of his shots, my brother said, I want some mountains in the background of his close-up. And when you see you'll see the background of his close-up. There's mountains. It was like $15,000 just for some stupid mountains in the background of his shot.
That's Michael Imperioli did an incredible job right here. I'd just like to point that out. As a soldier without a dick.
Here's Chris.
It's delirious, man.
See those mountains. They're like MASH mountains, 4077.
You're serious? That shot cost you $15,000?
$15,000.
Well, there's two of them. There's that and another shot at the end of the scene. And he was like, I want mountains. And, we all thought they were going to be out of focus, but they came in all right.
We thought we were going to get rejected. We thought Disney would be like, hell no.
There's a lot of little things in here that are digital, like the water buffalo running. There was a mane on his, a muzzle that was on his mouth, and he looked domesticated. So we digitally erased that off. A lot of fixes like you see at the end. Muzzle flashes here and there. When Anthony gets in a fight with the guard grabs his shotgun, and you see this muzzle flash come out. Like he shot while he was in a struggle. That wasn't even in there. It wasn't even planned. We never even knew that was going to happen on the set. We just edited it later with the sound effect, and it worked really cool. And I look at this movie as, I looked at the script, and there was a lot of 3 or 4 page dialogue scenes that didn't need to be in there. We didn't know until we got to the set. Those turned into 5 and 6 minute dialogue scenes. And we now know that the shorter the better, the less said the better, and if you can say it in a shorter sentence, then that's better.
When do you go?
A few minutes ago.
It's better to
Watch
check
Chris
out.
right here. Here goes $15,000 again. 1, 2. $15,000 down the drain. Yowza.
Now here, I got to specifically talk about this shoot right here, which was the last 3 days of shooting was this right here. And I don't know why we picked this location, but we were on swampland right there, right?
That's quicksand.
And it's basically like quicksand. It's like the only thing keeping you up from sinking is roots from the ground. So you walk in one area and you go down to your thigh in mud, right? So they put down boards for us to get around on. And if you notice this scene as far as camera goes, it's very static. There's not that many moves. There's not that much flamboyant style at all because, man, in order to move the camera, it would have took an army to get in there to do that. I mean, it was like it was mentally draining to think about even moving the camera.
It's worse than working on the sands of Iwo Jima.
Why did you choose that place then?
I don't know. I mean, let me even talk about
vegetation. The vegetation was great.
Yeah, the vegetation was great. The clearing. This shot right here, where this guy blows up. We had to tie the dummy to 2 beams that were tied to a tree, so that when the explosion went off, the ground wouldn't shake and the camera that was locked off wouldn't shake. So because the location was bad, the camera had to be locked off between two trees on a beam, and the dummy had to be locked off on two trees between a beam, and nothing was touching the ground. It was like very unstable.
Yeah. I was about to say that. Yeah, whenever a bomb would go off, everything would shake around. I felt like an earthquake because it was just it was just swamp. That's all it was. And you'd sink. There were sinkholes that would go. Oh man.
What happened to Skip in this scene was a real reality. It happened with one of my squad members. That person in real life for me was a brother by the name of Skeeter. And Skeeter was a gun-hole type of a guy. I mean, it wasn't nothing he wouldn't do. He would chase Viet Cong, put ropes around the neck, carry him for 6-7 miles and stuff like that. And I think that it just caught up with him. Whatever problems he was dealing with at home, something like that. And the many times we had set up ambushes at night and stuff like that, might have all caught up with him. And but Skeeter was tough. He's real. And I think that was just one situation that war brings upon people if you don't stay focused.
This was actually one of the. You remember this, Albert? One of the funnest days, I thought.
Yeah.
As we were shooting this, and it was the most basic shit. But all the guys look real. And when the photos snapped off, everybody was in character. Look at Skip right here, and in this shot right here. What does he do? He don't want to be down with that,
Well, I mean, what's his name? Cleon put that mud in his face. Nobody expected that. That was all.
That was my idea.
Oh, I thought
that was my Bonnie Greenberg idea.
The Hughes brothers.
So these are two Taxi Driver shots you can see right here. That's from Taxi Driver, and then the next one is from Taxi Driver 2. The De Niro eyes. Also available on Criterion Disc. Pick it up, please. $59.95.
Yeah, this is like the 70s blaxploitation feel, and also this is the same neighborhood he walked down in '68, but now it's mostly black and Hispanic, and pretty run down because everybody's like pulled the businesses out, and and there's not a lot of money in the neighborhood, so it's all changed, and this is the first time we see that Skip is sprung out on dope.
Cowboy's back. He doesn't have this perm anymore. Well, I think that when we talk about the costume in this movie, people always ask us about, afros. Did we want to be more accurate with that or the costuming? And our thing was we wanted to make it more visually accepting in the time period we are in right now. If you were to come out with like our mom wanted us to come make our main character have a tremendous afro, how come I'm gonna have a big afro? Because people won't watch the movie seriously. They laugh at our main character almost through the whole movie. We've had a big afro, And then you talk about the clothes. Some of that stuff was so flamboyant. If you look at something like Casino now, and you see Robert De Niro put his pants on at the end of the desk, and the crowd just laughs off that. It's like you can't get away with showing these corny clothes for every scene because the crowd's gonna laugh at every wardrobe change, So
especially the 70s.
Yeah, especially the 70s. So we had to tone it down a bit.
Here's a Scooby-Doo Shaggy walk right here, and it's Richard Pryor. This is Skip doing Richard Pryor.
Lisa Rinzler.
In this scene where Skip and Anthony are walking down the street, I've always been very sad about this shot, this scene, because it's very, very, very sunny, and I believe the line is, the neighborhood's gone downhill, or something along those lines, but in fact, it's very frontal sunlight for a lot of the scene, and it would have been good to have been shooting on a street that laid out differently, but there you can see there's hard sun hitting Skip's face. It's like the dialogue is saying one thing, but the image is saying another. The neighborhood really doesn't look like it's gone downhill at all. There's very vibrant colors and well-kept houses. We had a lot of trouble finding the right house to be Anthony's house, and so we eventually got sort of between a rock and a hard place and took this house and this street, but it unfortunately looks a bit cheerful for what's meant to be happening in this story.
Ari Merretazon.
After Vietnam, I came back to Washington, D.C. during May, and of course Martin Luther King had just got assassinated, so the city was in uproar, on fire, people looting, doing those type of things. I pretty much stayed in, but the politics of it all I was still dealing with in my head. I came back home to fight my war, so I was attracted to that. Okay, so I got involved with some of the Black Panther movement at that time. Got involved with some medical students who would want to do some independent medical facilities in communities and community-based medical facilities and whatnot. I got involved with a place called African Hut where we just go come there to talk about politics and those types of things. And I didn't want nothing to do with the Army anymore.
I'm cool, baby. I'm gonna split. But you here, baby, you home. We got plenty of time to do our thing. You know what I'm saying? Brother. Go see your mama.
Right on. I'm gonna go check her out.
With her fine ass. You know I've been taking care of your mama while you been gone.
Boy, I'll kick your head in. Don't talk like that.
Alan Hughes.
I'd say, you know, in my notes, you see that I printed out that frame from 400 Blows with the family sitting together, and you see all the exact frames in both this and the earlier scene. It's like real traditional, real conservative, formal, you know, nothing, no real moves in here, if you notice, too, you know, and it's supposed to, you know, look like a real structured family, you know, and it's really not. If you look at it, there's little problems like any other family. It's not like pristine or anything like that, but that's what I want the family to be to him. You know, it's supposed to look like you know, your ordinary family, and that's the way I shot it. Basically.
Plus, I mean, the later scenes right here with the parents is more rustic looking. It's more like worn out, you know, the colors, and it's more dark, you know. And the first family scene was more warm, more colorful, you know, browns and tans, whatever. And in the coming home scene, it's just very depressing looking, you know. And it's Edward's gone. They look, you know, a little older, you know, it's just a little different.
You can go and get help. No bad habits, Ma. Except a little killing. On my country, of course.
Hey, let me give you some more of these collars. Baby, this show is good.
Larenz Tate.
This scene right here is by far my favorite, most favorite scene. This shot, because I mean, when he walks down those stairs, you see Anthony as a whole different person. I mean, even though he's gone through Vietnam, he's gone through the stage, adolescence as a kid, he's back. He's found tough times, but he still wants to go to a place where he's familiar with, his old stomping grounds. And when he goes there and sees all his friends, I mean, it's just great. And that's how I felt, you know. It was just, I just felt really, really, you know, elated when we were doing that scene, because I said, wow, he's back and he's doing his thing. I wanted to wear that hat. I thought, I said, you know, Alan Albert, can I wear a hat or something? And he was like, yeah. I said, the reason I got that idea, I remember seeing my father and you know, old pictures of my family, and they used to wear those hats. And I said, man, I tell you, man, I have to do it because I feel something here. And when we did that scene, it was so cool how the shot was. He goes down, he has a cigarette in his mouth now. You never saw Anthony smoking in a pool hall. You always saw Kirby and those other guys. And now he's doing his thing, and he's just back to his old stomping grounds, a place where he knows, and it just feels great. And he thinks, hey, I'm back, everything is great. I'm gonna see, you know, Kirby, and you know, who knows, maybe I can, you know, run some numbers for him again. But we find out that things haven't been so swell for Kirby.
How you doing? Oh, boy, come on in the back here, boy. Come on.
Man, I've been everywhere looking for a gig.
Motherfucker, forget about you getting your ass on.
Keith David.
The one thing that this was politically true to, I think, in the time, is the reality that here these guys put their ass on the line for the country, you know, for better conditions in their own country, to secure, you know, our position as Americans
I'm dealing with the NYPD, greediest, most corrupt.
our right to democracy and all that. And here you come home
So I got the fuck out.
to a totally inequitable situation. Because, well, I mean, except for the fact that there were also the white soldiers who came home and also couldn't get jobs. There were large amounts of them as well. So therein the brotherhood stayed intact. But where wartime brotherhood meant one thing, peacetime brotherhood meant yet another degree of separation.
You afraid of blood?
That's all I've been around for the past 3 years.
And that's why you can have phrases like the black vet, and as opposed to an American veteran or a veteran of war. I mean, because it was definitely a difference in the way they were treated, the way we were treated coming back home. And then you also have the distinction of being a Vietnam vet. That means you could be white, you could be black, you could be Puerto Rican, you could be anything. They still looked upon you with this kind of loathing. You were looked down upon. You were in that war, you know.
The scene where he returns to their house for the first time, you see him look down where he used to deliver the milk and kind of reminiscing on that. And then Delilah opens the door, and a lot of people talked about her afro. Is it, were we inspired by Angela Davis or whatever? And I think that her being involved in that whole revolutionary thing and, being a college student also, a lot of those women, would wear their hair natural just as a statement. And that was why Angela Davis had her hair that way. And that's why this character would have her hair that way. Plus, she looks very good in the afro.
I thought you were going over to the communists.
Nah, not me.
I think if you were smart, that's what you would have done.
What? Man, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, girl.
Nah, it's cool. I mean, it's not.
The other thing that I appreciated about this story is that you got to see a glimpse into a family life situation on 2 counts. That this young man, despite the outward appearance of his environment, the outward environment, comes from a home with values. He comes from a home with values and morals, with parents that believe in something. That he is a healthy young male that can maintain and, in fact, want to nurture relationships with his woman. And too many times we do not see those kind of relationships where black women and black men are, in fact, struggling to, do their family thing. In this case, it didn't work out. But I believe that Larenz was very good in portraying the fact that he really wanted to. That's what he wanted. I mean, there were other circumstances that came in, but it was important to him to be able to raise his children. And I think that's a message that I think cannot be overlooked and should not be overlooked, because that was one of the themes of the movie, is how we do have a family life.
Come here, Mommy. Good girl. Come here. Look at him. That's Daddy. Say hi. Hi. This is Sarah Marie Curtis. Hi.
A lot of actors, aren't secure enough to even take criticism directly. And one thing I appreciate about Rose Jackson, I'm just thinking now that I'm watching the scene again, is that she came up to me and she goes, "How's that? How's that?" And I always give them like, and I'll go into the details. I don't break them down like it was shitty or this, that, and the other, because it's a delicate, subject right there. I mean, delicate thing with actors. And she came up to me, she goes, don't candy coat anything for me. If it's fucked up, tell me it's fucked up, just like that. Tell me it's shitty. Tell me to do it over again. Tell me how you want it, this, that, and the other. That's the way Larenz is too. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at, and it's so much easier when an actor comes up to you and goes, it's not about me. It's about it's about making it better, and just don't bullshit. Don't just tell me tell me straight up. And she's very good at ad-libbing. She's very good at you go, Rose, hey, we need this, like all this in here. We just did in rehearsals, and she was very good at not saying corny things or having a real good self-image of herself and of the character and what she can lend to the character. And a lot of times actors confuse the two. This little the pimp mobile rolling up was a fun scene to shoot. Is this the first day of Cliff? This is the first day of Cliff work, yeah. And we shot him, and it was his idea to use a lollipop and do that whole thing. And it was originally written that he had a conversation with Anthony here. He spoke with him and said his name wrong and all that stuff like that. And we thought that he should not even acknowledge him. That's more disrespectful and pimpish. And we changed that at the last minute. And then we went in later in this night and we shot little extreme close-ups like this, to accent the tension between him and Anthony, and also Anthony's point of view. I mean, when a guy's looking at another guy, I mean, he's jealous. There's the jealous feelings or whatever. You tend to look at things that scrutinize, and for the first time, and he's paying attention to the fact of what he's wearing, what he's looking like, and basically he feels like to Anthony like a pimp, and that's basically what we try to lead on, In this scene originally, Juanita had taken the money from Cuddy, and later we decided after a test screening or two, where the audience turned totally against her, we decided to take that out and make it look like she just looked at the money instead of taking the money. Right here, Anthony's just getting to her place and getting to know her environment where she's living in. This is the only, if anybody, critics ever talked about a ghetto aspect of the movie, is this environment that she lives in, because she's trying to make it out there on her own, and she's not living at home with mom like Delilah, and she's living in a lower income area, which was actually shot right here in the South Bronx. And what's up?
I was gonna say that also, that you can tell that he does do a little passing of judgment during the two scenes that he comes to our house. He sees the roach, he sees Cuddy, you can see he's a little disgusted at the environment.
Anthony, I used to see Cuddy. Is that what you want to hear?
Oh, Blood made that very clear to me.
So then what's the problem?
Problem? Man.
Yeah, these two actors in particular, I was talking about, when they get together, in the first scene we were talking about, there was a scene where it was all bubbly and fun kid stuff, but, being that they're both so professional and enjoyed each other so much, they both, like, pulled a lot out of each other, gave a lot to each other, and it was fun even doing these scenes right here, with them, I wish we would have had better, time to, get the dialogue straight, because they're better actors than the dialogue permitted them to be. But when we did ad-lib, as we did in the scene when he walks out on her, and they get in this fight and whatever, and that was all pretty much ad-libbed, and they did it. When you let them do what they do best, it turns out. And I thought that was one of the most emotional scenes in the whole movie. That they played that very well.
Clean up time, cowboy.
See, man, why the fuck you always gotta talk some shit?
I'll show you my favorite in this pool hall sequence, because Anthony, he's so calm. And at this point in this pool hall scene, you see that Anthony is so in control of his surroundings. That's, for one, because he has grown up, but for two, that's what he learned over in Vietnam. You make sure that you control everything, and you will see in his eyes right here, right there, that he's, look at him. Oh, I like that. That was my favorite scene. My favorite shot is that you know, he looks at this guy in such a way, it's like, you know, I'm not that same kid, you know. I just feel a sense of control right there of all of his surroundings.
Of course, you know. Baddest motherfucker this side of Nicky Barnes. My boss man, Cuddy.
Todd Boyd.
It's interesting that Cowboy mentions Nicky Barnes, and Nicky Barnes is a real historical figure. He has become something of a legend in, say, New York underworld culture. Nicky Barnes is the character that Wesley Snipes modeled Nino Brown after in New Jack City, and he has lived on in the way that, say, Don Corleone has lived on in Italian-American culture. He has lived on, this being Nicky Barnes, throughout the lore of underworld culture in New York in the 60s and 70s. He was, in essence, you know, endowed with the skills of Mike Eisner or Michael Ovitz in terms of running the drug trade in the ghettos of New York City, and at the same time developing this kind of whole aura around his persona. These scenes say a lot about, you know, what he's doing. He's a butcher, as he's been trained to be in Vietnam, and now he's practicing it for a living. But society is doing a butcher's job on him in his life, and you know, the fact that he is seen sawing the head in half, you know, is very closely tied to the fact that his head has been and will continue to be tampered with, like Skippy's head, in terms of the changes that are going on in society at the time. So the fact that he's a butcher, I think, can be linked to, say, what we see in Killer of Sheep, Charles Burnett's film, where the actual profession of the main character is somehow linked to larger societal concerns.
Come here. Come here. Look at you. Fat girl.
Watching this particular scene, I'm reminded of one of the classics of the blaxploitation era, and that is Ivan Dixon's The Spook Who Sat by the Door. And in The Spook Who Sat by the Door, Freeman, the main character in the film, is attempting to galvanize the community through one of the street gangs. He basically brings them to consciousness, and through bringing them to consciousness, they, in essence, engage a revolution. And so that, as a film, I think, is very informative to the underlying revolutionary message that we get in Dead Presidents, where you have those people in the community trying to bring about a sort of consciousness. But what's great about Dead Presidents, to me, is it doesn't go for the cliche. And after, you know, a poor film like Panther, it's interesting that you have the politics alluded to, but they're never completely foregrounded, which once again refers back to a film like Superfly. When Priest is confronted by the black nationalists, he says, hey, look, when you get your shit together, I'm down. But until then, I have no use for your rhetoric. So to that extent, the politics, I think, are very subtle, but they're there. And what's important is the fact that it's not apolitical, but it's not overly political in an overt way that becomes offensive either.
5 months pregnant, you can't be no nurse's aide.
I said we'll be all right.
So this scene right here at the car, which this song was specifically picked before, and the shots were developed before the scene was even developed, actually. This was the scene that was supposed to come following the cowboy getting his ass kicked, actually. And this was a hard scene to work at because we were working on this scene to being on the set, you know, whether we wanted Anthony to say I'm down or whether we wanted him to say, yeah, I'm interested. And we shot it a couple different ways, and we decided to go with, you know, kind of like he was indecisive. You couldn't really tell which way he was going, but he was kind of thinking about it. And at this point, you know, half the audience, I mean, the audiences I've been in, 90% of the audience right here usually feels like he needs to get off and do the heist. Depending on the demographics, meaning age, like younger people tend to think that it's time to do something drastic, and older people are like, well, this is not a, you know, whatever. I mean, this movie's perceived different ways by different nationalities. Also, I mean, whether like at the Magic theaters, they were like right here, they're like, go do the heist, and you go up and see it off of Beverly somewhere, and everybody's like, why is he even considering doing that heist? In this scene right here, Isaac Hayes' 1972 version of "The Look of Love," which was originally sung by Dionne Warwick, I guess, was put in this scene, and the 12-minute version is on the soundtrack. This is the long version we have here. This is actually one of our favorite songs, my favorite song personally, in the whole movie. Yeah, if you listen to its entirety. And also, I want to bring up the fact that Jose's playing with a lighter right here. And we were talking about earlier character development, whether there was more scenes with him and his pyrotechnics and all that stuff like that, or his pyromaniac type of personality. And the first scene you see Jose, he's playing with a lighter. And I think the thing we related to with that is we were always like little pyro heads, and we thought that if you just show this kid playing always with fire, people get the message, but some people don't get the message. We used to always be in the matches and burning shit down, and
we even burnt the motel room down one day
by mistake.
You're gonna be walking in a minute.
Oh, cool out, Kirby, man. I'm not gonna burn your car. Not yet, at least.
The scene of Anthony and Juanita in bed was shot in a studio, and there's their interior room, and then there's an exterior flat with a window, and we made rain from hoses rigged over the window. Stevie Kershaw did all the special effects, and he was really brilliant. He made rain and snow and blew up the armored car. He was really amazing. Anyway, this rain scene was made in a studio, and I'm fond of the scene. Again, it visually complements what's going on with the character. It's not a very comforting scene, and nor is Anthony comfortable at this point. Yeah, the dream sequence, by the way, was shot with obviously strobe and flashing light and a lot of 6 frames per second.
Baby, come here. It's me. It's all right. It's all right. Here. Just another dream. Just another dream.
This scene right here was, a scene where it's self-explanatory. Anthony is getting fired, and Saul doesn't really want to do it, and
laid off, more like
laid off, and they have a good relationship, and a lot of people wonder, well, if we had put this in to improve relations with blacks and Jewish people, and I said before that this character originally was Italian until we cast Seymour Cassell, so there was never any racial motivations other than we wanted somebody to be sympathetic to him or nice to him or whatever, and it was just a job he had. Now he's going home, and
we're setting him up for the kill.
We're setting him up for a double whammy.
Seymour had been very fun. He had been, doing crazy throw-off lines. And I was trying to be serious at those moments, but I couldn't because Seymour would say, "Give me a kiss, don't leave me, give me a kiss, I need you." It's funny stuff. Seymour was very hilarious.
Anthony coming down the subway steps and getting the leaflet for the Nat Turner meeting. Again, it's a very simple moment. It's a one-shot scene, and again, we created snow, and there's a fire barrel, and the feeling that it's very cold, and it's his first awareness that there's a black consciousness changing, the black revolution, the Nat Turner meeting, and I was pleased with this as a one-shot scene.
Here you go.
The hallway scene I'm very fond of. I think it's my favorite lighting and shooting, perhaps, in the movie. It's very, very simple, and it had fantastic walls David Brisbane and I had talked about where we could use, I forgot what it's called, but it's some kind of lustrous paint and texture so that the light would sheen the walls. I'm a big fan of this kind of sheen that in this hallway at once looks seedy but kind of snappy. Also, David and I had a lot of discussions about practical lighting fixtures. This hallway was fluorescence, and he changed all these to hanging practicals. Again, it's all lit with bounce light, directional bounce light.
But you back now, and I'm gone.
His nails, very eerie, very creepy. Angel Heart. Reminds me a little bit of Angel Heart, the nails in Angel Heart.
I'll front you. Keep your shit. Listen, brother, I know about pride, but you got mouths to feed.
Oh, it was very intense. It was very intense. When some of my best scenes, some of my best work was off camera that I was doing for Cliff, because he was there for me. And I said, I'm not the kind of actor who is selfish. If you've given me something, I'm going to give you something. And some of my best stuff was off camera. And afterwards, Cliff thanked me. And I said, no problem.
You know what's interesting about Cuddy's character is looking at his fingernails. His look is so detailed, even to his fingernails. The length of the nails and the fact that, he has a certain clear polish, having just got a manicure. The extent to which this is relevant. I can remember growing up in Detroit in the 70s and my uncle taking me to the local barber shop, and there was a gentleman in the barbershop by the name of Van who did manicures. And as a child, I remember manicures by Van, and all the pimps would be in line waiting to get their nails done. And so when I saw Cuddy and I saw his nails, I immediately thought, well, this is perfect, because even to the smallest detail, we have a pimp who's so concerned about his appearance that, he cultivates every image. And I think this is very much why Cuddy's character in the limited scenes that he appears in the film is so powerful.
Suck it! Suck it, nigga!
I mean, it's perfect. They're like appropriate length. They're like polished. Manicures by Van. I'll never forget that. Van, by the way, was gay, which added to this story even further. And so I'm 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, and I'm with my uncle, and all these pimps are in there. And here's this queen in essence, just flaunting around. It was just an amazing scene. It could have very easily been a scene in this movie.
See you, Santa Claus.
I'm all right.
What's doing?
Oh, I'm all right. Damn.
This scene is very painful, and it's painful because Anthony has been, in essence, taking in everything and not really responding. Not really responding very well at all. But here, it just, he reaches a boiling point. He loses it. And all that anger and angst and frustration of Vietnam and anxiety just comes out. And it comes out against, a weaker person like Juanita. But it's like it was building up and it had to come out somewhere. And here it is.
Wait. What the fuck you talking about if you want to give it back? Nah, fuck that shit.
This shot goes from the bedroom through the living room to the kitchen, back to the living room, and sees the hallway. And not only is it a challenge for lighting and for the operator, but it's a challenge for the focus puller. This is a brutally hard shot because the focus is constantly shifting. You have to make a decision on which plane to put in focus because we're shooting around 2832 on this stuff. And it's hard for the operator, but it's also hard for the actors because when you're doing a lot of camera movement, the actors are asked to really participate and come close, go far, hit a mark. It's like dancing. It's a dance choreography of sorts between the actors and the camera. To get everything right in a film, you have to have all the technical aspects and, most importantly, the acting all has to hit it at once. It's like a synchronous moment. It's an instant. And it's certainly the thing to try for.
Fucking him, right?
That's what you want here, Anthony? That's what you want here?
Yeah.
Fine. I'm fucking him.
Larenz Tate.
Rose was just phenomenal. I mean, she was just phenomenal. And she was giving me all the things that I needed. I mean, I just wanted to go irate right then and there, but I said, just find the time. Just find the time. That anger is building up. And so when I grabbed her, she knew it was going to come, but I didn't know. I didn't tell her where it was going to come. It was all ad-lib because I didn't know she was going to be that feisty. Like, you know, we both talked about the scene like the next day. She's like, you know, I was in the shower and my neck was like burning because you had, I mean, this was an ad-lib right here when she grabbed me, and I grabbed her and I took her across and right here when my hands are around her neck and I'm shaking her like a rag doll. She didn't know it was coming again. And I said, look, I don't want to hurt another actor or actress in a scene, but it was all kind of, you know, ad-lib was just so intense. But I knew I would never hit her. Me as an actor, I knew I wasn't going to hit her. I knew I wasn't going to do that. But I had to do something that was equally as intense.
Ari Merretazon.
Yeah, I was amongst the members who actually ran the African Hut, the group that ran the African Hut. The African Hut was a center point where you can meet people in the political mainstream who had different political views, from the Republic of New Africa to Black Muslims to Panther Party to university students. It was down in the basement of a traditional historical hotel called the Dunbar Hotel. And so it was a place where people could come and dialogue around cultural values and things of that nature. So you had a wide range of people who come in and dialogue.
Power to the people! Power to the people!
Really, because you had people giving their lives in war, a war that they claimed that wasn't theirs, being mistreated upon return. So you had true facts that showed you that something needed to be done in our communities. Our culture needed to be more displayed. We needed to be more about self-reliance and self-sufficiency. Clearly, there was enough evidence to say that we wasn't accepted as part of this nation. And there was many people on the other side, whites and some blacks, who said, well, if you ain't like what's going on in the United States, you can go on back to Africa.
It's time to do.
Do what?
Revolution.
Oh, wait a minute. Getting a little out of my league now.
Is that what you're going to say when the revolution comes? When it's
I was working in the post office, going to school at night.
What you know about weapons?
And then I heard about, again, and also still in the political mainstream in our communities, right? Being touched by that. So I heard about this money being transported from military bases in Germany to the Treasury Department to be burned.
Why don't you join us?
And so I was trying to find out more information about it. So what is that, to be burned?
Maybe.
And we need money in our communities and to do things. So one guy who had told me about it said, well, I know, a guard who's willing to help, set it up for you. He don't want you to be in no contact with you, and you're not having no contact with him, but, I can make the arrangements happen, And so as we talked that through, my understanding, the guard decided to back out. He didn't want to do it anymore. But with this revolutionary fervor I had and the zeal I had, I said, we're going to do it anyhow.
I got this plan to make some money. I want you to keep this shit to yourself. At 6:15 a.m., the truck pulls out of the post office at 149th and Grand Concourse. Now it makes one.
And so I got a couple of brothers who I was hanging out with politically. And we began to follow this truck for a couple of days and be able to get its pattern. And of all the places we decided to hijack this truck was right there behind. It was behind the National Federal Loan Bank Board, which was part of the police complex, the Washington D.C. main headquarters. You had the Home Loan Bank Board, then you had the headquarters for the Washington D.C. Metropolitan Police, right there in the same big circle. So we actually liberated this truck from the parking lots of the Washington D.C. Police headquarters. Okay, right there in a little federal enclave down on Louisiana Avenue in Washington D.C.
And we'll keep your money.
Fuck that shit, man. I'm telling you right now, if I get caught, I'm shooting my fucking way out.
Nigga, put that shit down.
I think we need another man on the street.
There were a couple of ways we could have done this scene, and you know, I think we chose to do a more traditional dead-on angles and everything like that. But we thought about doing even circular moves around, which is real traditional too. But I just went with a more basic dead-on close-up approach with a beaming light overhead, which is out of like what's that movie called? Asphalt Jungle.
That's it.
And this overhead is like another classic kind of conspiracy shot. They're plotting to do something. I talked to a guy out there who actually served I think 10 years or something like that for something similar to this, and they actually thought that we were doing a story about them. And he came out and said, "Yeah, the brothers want me to give you the blessing for doing the movie about them." And I was like, "Oh, well, it's about a guy from D.C." This scene right here where they're sitting in the church was originally like 6 minutes long too, and it had the same problem that the Delilah scene had, as he was explaining all his motives. All my kids, my church is messed up and broke down and needs to be fixed up, and Cleon's crazy. So in the end, we all decided that he's just crazy. He don't need no goddamn motives. Yeah, to make the motive simpler was the one thing we had to work on. Was like, for some reason the writing was trying to make excuses for why these people were involved, and they really didn't need that many excuses. And a lot of people are looking for it too. They're coming back. Did Anthony have enough pressure on him to want to do something like this? And it's like, well, we haven't even dealt with the whole readjustment period, in detail of coming back and, Yeah, I think the biggest thing about this movie though is if you really want to tell the story properly, we would have to take 3 hours, because it's 3 different stories, and if you really want to show, the motivation for any of the stuff, you need to really show him getting back and hitting hard times, which was originally in the script. Him having a hard time finding a job, him going for interviews, him. But they shoved everything to the back. Yeah. And it takes, and then people go, oh well, if we would have done it that way, it takes too much time on that. It's always gonna be a complaint. Well, we saw a heist in the commercial.
The heist was shot at the midpoint of the second week of the film. I had been lobbying to shoot the heist much later during the shoot schedule, but shoot schedules are just not luxurious, and there's all sorts of considerations which have to do with studios and trailers and scheduling and actors that are outside of the technical and maybe even the director's control. The heist does have a cold tone, but it's not meant to be effect blue. What we did here was very simple. We shot with an LLD filter instead of with a full 85 correction, so that there was a cold tone to the overall scene. As best we could, we tried to stay out of sunlight. There's a couple of times we got bit where the sun sneaks through and you can see it in the background, but it was meant to feel cold and desolate, and that's why we went with a bluer tone.
This is all a build. Yeah. The exterior of the back of the bank, that was all bushes and, bombed out docks, It's like this was a rat infested place. It was like brick, old brick, and they came and actually built the whole, what do you call it? That bank, the dock and the bank, and they built it right against the wall that was bombed out. Yeah, because none of that bank is real. It's not real brick. It's what is that, plastic plaster, and what looks like concrete isn't real concrete. It's all it's like a centimeter thick of concrete on the loading dock, but everything else is wood. It's like everything. That's the first time we learned about sets or shooting on real sets is this movie. Yeah, I mean, director's probably watching this disc going, who gives a fuck? It's a motherfucking set.
There was a scene where it was an outtake that when Anthony returns home the first time, there were some people who had white makeup on their face. They were protesters, and they had some white makeup on their faces. And Alan and Al were like that. And they said, we're going to put you guys, opposed to putting you guys into masks, we're going to put you in white face. We didn't want people to see this person as Anthony who's, doing this heist.
The Hughes brothers.
The heist was originally intended to be shot like in 7 days. It was boarded that way because we didn't have the budget to have more, and it was also very poorly organized. We didn't have any preparation time or anything. So by the time we got down there, which was the second week of the shoot, me and my brother both had flus. We both had studio pressure because the studio at that time thought that things weren't looking too good because we were over budget. Like I believe it was $1 million a week at that point. They were averaging $1 million a week, and they're like, we got cut back days, and we're like, we got cut back days. We need more days for this. We thought we needed another week, and by that point, we had reached an emotional low. Like I said, we both had the flus, and the studio ended up coming down and threatening to fire, this person, that person, and we both had like a little nervous breakdowns of our own around that time, and basically had to tippy-toe our way into the heist because there was no proper planning. There were storyboards, but the rehearsal time that we needed to have, which a producer would have known, which we didn't have, was we didn't have a real producer there. We didn't have that time to.
We got really disoriented.
Well, we're shooting in that where the heist actually takes place right there in that little back alley, which really was just a bombed out place before we even got there. We were shooting right there, and that's a wind tunnel because the river. What river was that?
I don't even know.
It was the East River that was blowing the wind. And so if it was 25 degrees in New York City, it was 0 below right there.
It was like cold. I also got to say that one of the biggest motivations, and the scene we just saw before this, and with Skip and everybody setting up outside, was Sergio Leone movies. All the framings out there are like Western, wide, behind people's feet, and even the shootout is real Western. It's not like, it's real wide in framing and opposing shots basically. No, I wouldn't have any idea how many shots are in the heist sequence, but there's a lot we covered, and there's so many shots that we didn't even put in the heist there. We overcovered it. At one point, I had so many cameras going and so many shots that the studio was like, you need to cut down your coverage. But I was going into it shooting like you're painting a picture. You had to throw everything at it, and then in the end, hopefully we had enough.
What's funny is like if this thing was so shot out of sequence, that's what confused us the most. Is like this shot right here in the dumpster with Delilah coming up. This shot right here was shot at night, like one night, like at 8 o'clock at night when everybody was going home, and we just do little things like that in the side, and it was all in the same location, and you didn't know who was dead and who wasn't dead,
Yeah.
And it was tripping.
But it was a good learning thing, You go edit one night and you go, oh, we need that shot, so we went back and got this shot right here. That was an afterthought after almost everything was done, And then Delilah getting shot later in the heist, a lot of that was a reshot because I didn't like the angles we had in the first place, and a lot of little details like gun dropping and hands going for stuff, insert stuff that you can't pick up right there, that even your second unit, you don't not trust them to do it, but it just wouldn't be done right. We pick up later, even in reshoot days or pickup days.
Ari Merretazon.
I'm just telling the story as it happened, as I know it, and as I recall it. I'm not glorifying this thing because that's not in me to glorify. Right now, that part of my life is away from me in actuality, but it's something that has occurred in my life that I think, if held up in the right way, could have some redemptive effect on young men who view this film, to put it in context, and that if they doing wrong things, that it only take a moment to make it right. They can change at any time to make it right once they're committed to do so. That they're no longer want part of that gang life, they want no part of the criminal life. All they have to do is say so and start walking on it and believe in something higher than man.
Alan Hughes.
I think that I definitely give Wu credit for the two-gun thing in American cinema, and a reemergence of it, I guess. But we are influenced by him, and that's one thing that I think that the biggest influence for her having the two guns coming out of dumpster and her being a black woman and coming out of dumpster was like the blaxploitation period, Pam Grier type stuff, combined with your modern John Woo type film.
I didn't think that would make it.
What was that?
We didn't think that. We both didn't think that cop getting shot in the knee would make it, but they never had a complaint about that. Can I say something right now? I like the sequence right here. We've been talking so much shit about the movie. I happen to like that.
Well, let's
that
stop
whole
bashing it.
That whole knee blasting sequence. This is another scene right here where it was all done in one shot because we didn't have time. It was the first shot of the morning one morning, and when you see Keith David come in here. Him and Cleon collide, or Bokeem Woodbine is the actor right there in the military jacket, and he busts his nose right there.
He's bleeding as we
speak. Profusely right there. And he played it off and went off into the whatever. That's the only interesting thing about this scene because it's pretty shitty.
There's nothing else.
Yeah, it's funny because we had everybody on standby. She stood by for 8 days straight. In her trailer, freezing. It was freezing cold out there. And we bring her out and we set her up and we go, okay, Ryan, shoot this. And we wouldn't shoot it. She waited around for another 2 days and we get her out there and maybe we shoot one shot with her and then we send her back to her trailer. And one time the camera operator came up and goes, got an actress out here in the dumpster with tears in her face,
I just want you guys to know that.
I ran over. I guess I don't know if she was. If it was, I say, are you? Is there a problem? Is the wind, blowing you out? She said it was the wind, so everything was fine.
I think that at first the idea for the face is going to be like mime or clown makeup. Then our production designer David Brisbane came up with these pictures of war protesters back then, the skeletal faces. So we took a little of that and then made it into their own little designs, individual designs, and it derived from two different things. I think clown, mime face, and the skeletal stuff from the protesters in the '60s. Here's the last shot that came in the sequence. Actually, it's feet turning, right? The missing piece. We had a mechanical dummy that got hit, and I had real specific shots.
How much was that wall?
That wall cost $25,000 because there was no wall at the end of there, and we had to build a brick wall back there. So it was that was one of the biggest things because we couldn't find an alley that was long enough. The alley wasn't as long as it appears in the edited scene, but we made it longer by the way we shot it. And then we had to add the wall at the end, reinforce it with sandbags and all that kind of. It's real brick and everything.
Steel everything.
Yeah. So. Walking By would be the song that I guess people most remember about the film.
You're right here. I think we put the song in here over the money and when they got back because this is, like we said, this Isaac Hayes song was emotionally matched the content of the movie we felt, and it was it was the payoff song and it was the payoff right there at the money and it all came together and
it's grand.
It's grand,
It's emotional, just the sound more so than even the lyrics, or what the movie was about to us.
We made a lot of cassettes and gave it to the actors, and it got them really in the mood. Larenz used to listen a lot on the headphones before you do a take. But the one song that universally that the actors and all of us felt encompassed the mood or the feel was Walk On By Isaac Hayes. The videos on this laser just peep it out. Because it just the whole theatrical, orchestra feel had a very, very full emotional
Ennio Morricone kind of. That's what we were telling Isaac when we did a video with him. It's like that song was like an Ennio Morricone score with Sergio Leone. It's like this broad scope. It opens up. It's like real emotional and everything like that. And to us, it's the original, even though it's not. It's the only version I want to listen to.
Todd Boyd.
When Isaac Hayes does Walk On By, it's really a love song, or let's say a breakup song. If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by. I can't stand to see you. You've broken my heart. But it's using this film in a totally different way. And I think what the film is going for is the vibe of the song, because it has this haunting, eerie sense of destiny to it. That, you know, the strings and just the whole sound itself. And then when Isaac finally starts to sing, his deep voice, and the way it resonates.
You listening to me? Look at him. Oh, shit. Now say some more shit. I'll knock your ass right back down, fake ass wannabe preacher, no members having motherfucker.
Why don't y'all stop acting like some fucking clowns?
You know, it's the vibe of the song that's important, in conjunction with, you know, what's going on in the scenes. If you listen to the actual words, they really had nothing to do with what's going on, but the vibe is just truly amazing.
I'm gonna shoot me a motherfucker, and then we're gonna be splitting this thing up 4 ways, yeah?
Man, I can't believe this. It's gonna burn all this shit. All this shit. And a nigga can't even find a job.
Well, that's Uncle Sam for you, baby. Money to burn.
Skippy says, you know, they're going to burn all this shit in reference to the money. They're going to burn all this money, you know, as though it's very frivolous. They have no concern whatsoever for this massive amount of money, and a nigga can't even get a job, you know. That is one of the ironies of being black in America, is that you have this money which in essence goes to waste on a daily basis, and the basic necessities of living in a country like America aren't even in any way addressed. You know, when he says a nigga can't even get a job, it's like, hey, that's being black in America, and that line is just strong in conveying one of the ironies and contradictions of blackness in America in the 1970s and still in the 1990s.
Let's go to the liquor store and go to the club. Look, man, I'm gonna take care of you. We're gonna go down to the club. We don't know the motherfucker.
Ari Merretazon.
The Santa Claus outfit deal didn't have it all. In fact, it was a little degrading to me in a way. I didn't like that because it was very imbecilic, you know, in a way. What we did, we had a day down at the African Hut during the day. We had clothes and toys in and invited folks in, you see, to come in and select. So it was done not on the street. It was done inside, you see. I just thought it wasn't pictured right. It was done like, you know, these folks ain't got nothing on their mind. They just clear imbeciles in that respect. You don't do things that way. I mean, for us, it was a real live thing that we had done. And so we had to put at least a little thought into our behaviors and whatnot. And that type of behavior we didn't engage in. We dealt with things in-house. We bought the clothes and the toys there, and then we invited folks in and may have their selection. And the folks that was invited in was part of other, was referred to us by other community organizations that we was supporting at the time.
You gave toys and turkeys to people, and then you got the hell out of Dodge.
Y'all saying my man is going around handing out $100 bills and saying that God Almighty gave it to him?
My cousin lives up there, man.
And here's another case where we used one of the songs of the period. Curtis Mayfield's more of a score. It says, what song is this? If there's hell below, which you don't begin to even hear the greatest lyrics of the song. But you know, we unfold the next 3 scenes with this one song, this one period of time. It's all said. If you listen to the song, all the period is captured within the whole song. I mean, the Nixon presidency and everything.
Yeah, pick up Dead Presidents Volume 1. You will. The CD is in stores now.
That's yours, motherfucking punk ass friend.
Lisa Rinzler.
It was just one of those moments where the battery died in the car, so even though we were outside and rigged up and ready to go, the light was fading. We only had one day in that church, and that was for 3 scenes. And we just couldn't get the damn car to start. Finally, people pushed the car out of frame. But while we waited to come up with that solution and try to arrive at that solution, the sun faded behind buildings. And so we were in one of those situations where one shot is sunny, one shot is cloudy, but in order to tell the story, we made the shot. When I read the scene of Skip dying, I just saw the color green. And so I asked David Brisbane to provide a green lamp as the motivation for lighting it. the Al Green Memorial Room. It's too bad you can't see his hot pants because they were red.
Albert Hughes.
When we got to the set that day, we were shocked to see that the TV set was black and white because we were very much looking forward to seeing that Al Green footage in full pimp color, pimpstrumental color. You know, our partner knows Don Cornelius, Daryl Porter, and we told him to tell Don that we want some old Soul Train stuff with Al Green. He tells him, and Don Cornelius says, "Oh, I got some great stuff with him in hot pants, you know, and this, that, and the other, you know, it's embarrassing stuff, whatever." So he sends over like 5 episodes of Soul Train with everybody, like Bill Withers, everybody was in it. So we got to study it from more than even Al Green, the dance, the look of everything. We studied a lot of these tapes for.
And also, you know, this was a perfect thing because of his outfit, and it was a little humorous, so it wasn't setting people up for the worst kind of thing, you know.
It was more humorous in color, though.
Yeah, in color, I mean, it's a whole different thing.
About this whole situation, man.
Look, feeling fucked up don't help a goddamn thing. And it ain't gonna bring nobody back. So just worry about yourself. We just gotta get out of here. Come on.
So, man, you got everything?
Yeah, grab that bag.
I think that the funny thing about this scene where he gets caught in this back entryway was that it originally was scripted for him to get caught in the alley by the cops, and the line producer and everybody were telling me it's not cost too much to stay in Mount Vernon and shoot outside. It'd take too long, and the shots I want and everything. So we came up with a compromise with the production designer to build a hallway. And I said I want him to be surrounded like a rat, like it's a maze. Let's build this hallway like it's long and it leads out to the alley kind of thing. And then the cops swim around him, and then we get that final push-in shot. Like more of a Spielberg kind of push-in. To emphasize a moment. It just came all together after I saw the hallway. And I told David Brisbane the mouse comparison, and it came out perfect. In fact, he had to build the walls up longer so that we can get the shot from above, and you couldn't tell there was no ceiling and everything.
Fucking beautiful, man.
Mr. Curtis, you have been lawfully tried in this court and found guilty on all charges. Do you have anything to say on your own behalf before I pronounce sentence?
We didn't want to use the race card. But in this society, we know that there are a lot more challenges for some black people, especially those Vietnam vets who return home from their own people, because you can see people were like, why are you going off to war, to fight a war where they really don't even care about you here? You can't get a job here, for whatever reasons, but we had to touch upon that because it was a reality for people, and we wanted to be thorough and complete with that. And we didn't want to necessarily focus on the race issue. We wanted to make this a project where any Vietnam vet would see this project and say, that was me, that was my story, or that was my friend's story.
You or him to use the Vietnam War as a cop-out here. Anthony Curtis, for your participation in this crime, a crime that took the lives of several innocent people, I do hereby sentence you to the custody of the Attorney General of the United States for a period of 15 years to life.
Oh, my God.
I think there's a significant statement from the time that Martin Sheen says life, 15 years to life. And Anthony, for once, wakes up and he says out loud, life, questioning it. And then he goes, I risked my life for this motherfucker. This is the first time he really understands what he's up against, but it's too late. And that's the story of so many black men in America today, a tragic story. Many of them are up against an opponent that's impossible to defeat, and they don't realize it until it's too late. And I think in that way, Anthony's life is symbolic of the life of many young black men in America then and now. The last scene of the film, for me, is the best possible way to end the movie, because the main character, Anthony Curtis, is now about to begin a journey into the abyss. in a real sense that he's been on track to do for the whole film. The music, the image of all the black men on the prison bus going to jail is really a very profound statement about the meaning of black masculinity in America. That you have individuals who make a series of mistakes due to no fault of their own, but at some point they have to pay for these mistakes and pay for them in their own way. And pay for them in a way that not only affects them as individuals, but affects the community. And we're certainly seeing the impact of this in contemporary society. So to that extent, the end of the film, to me, is the hardest possible way of saying, as far as society is concerned, these figures are dispensable. And you don't need any, neat Forrest Gump-like tie-up to say this, because the film has been leading to this point throughout. So the Hughes brothers are not simply interested in recycling African-American film history. What they're interested in doing is adding to this history, but then going to a higher level of taking their craft and the craft of filmmaking to such a level that they would have to be considered in the same way as some of the most prominent young filmmakers in their era. To that extent, the Hughes brothers have, with their two films, Menace to Society and Dead Presidents, demonstrated that they are in a class by themselves. And they like to be considered this way, and if they keep making films on this level, they will have to be considered this way.
Yeah, I think that it has nothing to do with the movie, but just recently I've been opening my eyes up a lot, and I think that the industry is very, very racist. I don't think I think for a long time we were, on a cloud nine, because after Menace, everybody, if you make money, nobody sees any color. But once you stop making money or some falters, color, becomes an issue, and perception, what we can and can't do, becomes an issue. I think a lot of the white talent out there, they see color first when they look at us. They go, they're going to be John and Spike. Or do they even know how to direct actors? Just because we're black. If they haven't seen our movies, just because we're black, they think that we're not good directors. So I guess rounding the whole thing out on the racism in the industry, I think actors, black actors and actresses, feel it a lot more than say we would feel it. Although I think we're starting to feel it now, and we'll feel it a lot more in the future. I think the biggest problem with the way we're perceived is not with the studios, because the studios want us to do big action movies, see us doing crossover movies. They don't put us in this little hood category. I think the critics put us in the hood category. I think that the critics want to see us do personal, small, hood, emotional movies about blacks struggling, and if we don't stay in the hood like that, they're upset with that. And that's what happened with this movie too. A lot of them, we said a lot of things about how overly ambitious it was. Although it was a black movie about a certain struggle, the scope of it is what bothered them, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that we came out of smaller, elements and started becoming bigger filmmakers as far as our thinking. They don't like us thinking bigger like that. They wanted to keep us in that category. I think the studios, they did the opposite. They saw the Dead Presidents, and whether they loved it or hated it, they go, we can get these guys to do big action movies, or we can get these guys to work with stars. And to us, that's the way we rather be perceived. We rather be thrown a shitty, corny action script than all right hood script, because I think that's the biggest thing that we want to be perceived as is two guys that want to make a movie or whatever movie at the time that's the most challenging to us. In fact, the bigger it seems, the more it seems like we can't do it, the more we want to do it.
You say it in the background.
I'm Alan Hughes, and we're here, presenting the special Dead Presidents Laserdisc to all you people out there that have Laserdiscs. There's not very many of you, so if you can do me a favor, copy this onto tape and distribute this amongst your community. Thank you.